Hello, hello. Welcome to Coffee with Tina. I am Tina Swithin, author of Divorcing a Narcissist, checking in here with my coffee cup, founder of One Mom's Battle, and CEO of the High Conflict Divorce Coach Certification Program. Fine print, I am not an attorney. I'm not qualified to give you legal advice. We are very much a community of survivors who come together and talk about all things divorcing a narcissist. But always check with your attorney before you make any changes or alterations in your strategy, your communication, or your child custody case. So today's question is one that really weighs on any, healthy parent who is trying to navigate this battle. And the question is, how do you best parent a child or children in a healthy way when the other parent engages in counterparenting? So before we dive into the topic, I think it's important to unpack what counterparenting is. For those of us who are living it, it may be very self-explanatory, but for those who are new to this realm, I'd like to go into it a little bit deeper. So in general terms, the family court system wants to see us co-parenting. They truly view the court order as a default for when two parents cannot reach a decision or a compromise on their own. That's my humble opinion. It is the only branch of the judicial system where a court order is not upheld by the law. It's very rare if it is. The family court system seems to be the wild, wild west, and that's the best way I have found to describe it. Court orders just tend to be defaults. So, I'll take it a step further. Many of us find that when we try to adhere to the court order because we see it as our boundary imposed by the court, it's actually held against us. We're viewed as too rigid, uncompromising, unable to co-parent. So welcome to the twilight zone of family court, my friends. So the court is expecting us to co-parent with a terrorist, and that is the true definition of what so many are up against. I often said that on the day I received my family court case number, it was as though I was also assigned my own personal terrorist. And I'm sure you can relate to that feeling. Mentally, for our own sanity and well-being, we need to get to a place of parallel parenting. But unfortunately, when we show up that way for the court, that can backfire on us because we don't seem willing to, we look like part of the problem. So we still have to show up and present as the healthier of the two parents when it comes to co-parenting for court purposes. However, mentally, we have to compartmentalize so much of what is happening so we can truly show up and be the parent that our kids really need us to be. And if the other parent is engaging in counterparenting, that's playbook. It's what we expect them to do. And it also happens to be an actual spoke on our post-separation abuse wheel, which if you aren't familiar with that, you can download it at postseparationabuse.com. And you will find that there is a playbook for the abuser, and that is very much what they are utilizing in their reign of terror. So some of it, you can look at it and say, yes, every one of these things is my life. And I think what it does, it helps us to articulate those things and it also helps us to feel validated. But also it removes the element of surprise because we know what their playbook is in a lot of ways. And so, in that wheel, we define counterparenting as undermining your parenting abilities and decisions, denying or withholding consent for child medical or therapeutic needs, and seeking to impose opposing values in the child to spite you. And there is nothing in a child's best interest about counterparenting. And I know I am very much preaching to the choir because this is your life. So when I see this question, I do believe we have to compartmentalize what is happening when it comes to the other parent and the counterparenting. We have to shut off the energy that we are giving them. We know it is their goal to completely deplete us and to wear us down. And when we give them our power, we are allowing them to move forward with their plan full speed ahead. We have to remember that we are not structured the same way as the narcissist. They actually derive a feed and fuel from the conflict, from this battle, and ultimately from hurting us. And that's such a foreign concept for those of us who are normal, healthy individuals. Our feed and our fuel comes from love and light and positivity and helping others and lifting people up. And we are driven by the love that we have for our little ones and that authentic bond we have created with them. So when we are under this type of relentless attack, it is slowly destroying us. It challenges us to our absolute core, and it depletes us to the point that it does have an effect on our parenting, how we show up. It's pervasive. It has an effect on every area of our lives, how we show up to our jobs, for our friends, for our family, but most tragic, it has an effect on how we show up for our children. So the core of this, we have to remember, and what needs to become our foundation is that a child only needs one healthy parent to thrive. I am a firm believer in that. No pressure, but news flash, this job is on us, and it is a lot of pressure, and it's a lot of responsibility. It's a huge weight to carry when we are already feeling so weighted down by everything else going on. But what I like to remind people is that regardless of what happens in your child custody battle, in the family court proceedings, you've already won. You have won the war despite how many battles the narcissist claims victory over. You have the ability to have a true, authentic bond and connection with your children. You have the ability to give and receive love when it comes to a relationship with your children. And you have the ability to love them unconditionally. That bond that you created with them from the very beginning, that is their foundation. And because of the hurricane that is swirling around all of you, that foundation may shift. It may be tested significantly under pressure. It may develop fissures or cracks, but that foundation will stand the test of time. On the other hand, we have to remember that the narcissist relationship with the children is conditional. And I watch it happen time and time again, and it always takes a lot longer than we would like. But, the narcissist keeping the mask on when it comes to the children, it's just not sustainable. Their love is conditional, and when the child becomes a threat to their image, or the narcissist is no longer deriving a feed from the battle or from you, or 100 other scenarios that could come into play, because this path is so unpredictable. Eventually, the child sees behind the mask, and the path is going to look different for everyone. It's a painful road, and it's difficult to navigate. So when we're talking about how to parent children in these situations, it's really being in the here and now, not too far down the what if path or the should have, could have, would have path. I always say, the what if path is filled with anxiety, and the should have, could have, would have paths, those are all filled with shame and regret. And neither one of those provide the fuel that we need to move forward. So it's really being in the here and now, compartmentalizing the chaos to the very best of our ability so that we don't continue giving our power away, and we can show up and be the best versions of ourselves humanly possible. It's ensuring that our oxygen mask is on as tight as possible, and that we have a support system in place. A good therapist, friends, family, whether that be blood related or chosen family. Maybe you're in a place of needing to press restart and build all new relationships. This path will be different for everyone, but the goal is to have these things as priorities, even if they are not your current reality right now. Finding your village, even if your, close friends and family members live 1,000 miles away. It's making time for that phone call to have that connection. It's a glass of wine over Zoom on a Friday night, or a cup of coffee on Saturday morning over Zoom, whatever that is for you, so that you are able to maintain those connections with people who lift you up and help you keep your tank full or your cup full, whatever it is. Self-care is so cliche and sometimes feels absolutely obnoxious to continue hearing those messages. And maybe we need to redefine what self-care looks like in this chapter of our lives. Yes, it could absolutely be a massage, or getting a facial, or going for a walk on the beach, or taking a yoga class. But it could also be as simple as sitting with a cup of hot tea or coffee for 10 minutes uninterrupted before anyone else wakes up in the morning. Looking back on my journey, there have been times that I meditated sitting on the rug of my bathroom floor with the door locked for 5 minutes, just because I knew that was going to be the only time I had alone all day. Prioritizing what refills your tank in small increments that add up over time. And it is like the airplane analogy. If our oxygen mask is not on, we cannot be of service to anyone else, but especially to those who matter most, those little humans who are looking up to us. Although my little humans are now taller than me, but, we are the stable parent in their lives, and that is an important job. So, and I know being that stable parent feels like a heck of a lot of pressure, and that thought in itself is exhausting, because not only are we having to counter the damage that is happening on the other side, but we're still supposed to show up and be, the stable parent for our kids. It's a lot. And I want to, pause and validate that for you. I'm not minimizing it. It's difficult. When I was in the thick of my battle and I was working 2 jobs trying to locate my oxygen mask half the time, I leaned heavily on my daughter's therapist for tools and guidance. When I reflect back during that time, love and logic parenting style was a lifesaver for me. And I highly recommend it. It's a fantastic approach for any of those who have a narcissist on the other side of the co parenting equation. The premise, if you're not familiar with it, the premise of love and logic is leading with empathy and allowing consequences to be the teacher. We know that the narcissist is not capable of empathy, and they feel that they are above consequences, above the rules, above the law, which means it's even more important for our children to learn about both empathy, but also that actions have consequences. With the love and logic style of parenting, it's giving our children so many choices in their lives, which is important because everything feels so out of their control. And many times they're being bounced back and forth like a human ping pong ball, lacking the stability that we know children need. What's happening to our children as a result of these archaic court orders that are dividing them up like property, most of it goes against research. We know kids need consistency and stability. So, hey, let's make them live out of a suitcase and bounce around from house to house without ever truly having a home base. Again, it's that twilight zone, but we still do have a lot of things within our control. But when our kids are little and they feel like everything is out of their control, it was as simple as when my daughters were little. Instead of just grabbing a pair of pajamas and putting them in those, it was, inundating them with options. Do you want the pink pajamas or the blue pajamas? Do you want the blue sippy cup or the green sippy cup? When they're little, allowing them to feel like they have control over some things in their lives. It was getting down at their level and validating them, validating their feelings, ensuring that they knew that their voice was the most important voice in my entire world. One of the things I used to do, we had family meetings when the girls were in elementary school, and I had an agenda hanging on our cork board. And as things would come up through the week, such as my daughter, decides one night all of a sudden she hates broccoli, we would write it down on the list to talk about at our family meeting. And to many, it may seem so silly, but to them, it was such a big deal to feel heard. And maybe on Sunday night at our meeting, we talked about what different types of vegetables we could incorporate in to replace broccoli, and then maybe set a plan to try broccoli again in 6 months. And the takeaway from that is that my kids felt heard and they felt prioritized, like they mattered and their feelings mattered. I didn't have the time or the energy at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night to argue with my 6-year-old about broccoli. But when I put it on the agenda to discuss on Sunday night, it was both validating for her and she knew I cared. So it was teaching them at a young age all the things I wish we would have learned. I know I didn't learn. We weren't talking about these things back in the 70s and the 80s. What are boundaries? What are red flags? What is your intuition, your gut feeling? So some of that became me modeling that behavior instead of just trying to explain it to them. And that could be as simple as, gosh, that was a really hurtful thing to say. I'm going to go to my room because right now mom needs a timeout. And when I'm feeling better in about 30 minutes, we can talk about what just happened, but I'm going to go practice self-care and read a magazine or read a book, and then we can talk about it. That's just one example. And when it comes to red flags, that could look like a conversation about the guy at the donut shop who is being really rude to the cashier. That was a huge red flag for me, how one person spoke to another person. And so those conversations that we encounter in our everyday lives become great teaching opportunities and conversations to have with our kids. There was another thing we used to do every single night. We would talk about our high, mediums, and lows. And that would create categories in their minds of things that were either positive or neutral or negative throughout their day. And so we know, what happened at school today. Oh, it was fine. And they don't elaborate beyond that, but when their brains get into the habit of constantly thinking which categories different experiences belong into, it can open up some really amazing conversations. And, I used to do high, mediums, and lows, after their weekend. If they were with dad on the weekend, it wasn't me asking them, what did you guys do and all of that, because that's really inappropriate and we shouldn't be doing that. But if it's in my natural pattern and habits and routine, then when they come home on Monday night at dinner, I haven't seen them in 3 days. What was the high, medium, and low of your weekend? And sometimes, that really created conversations that were important. Other things, it's apologizing when I didn't show up as the best version of myself. Maybe telling them a story about how I didn't show up the way I wanted to at work, and talking through that, letting them know that I'm human and I'm not perfect. Maybe it's when I was really short with them, or when I snapped because we weren't getting out the door quick enough and I was worried about being late to court. I'd want to check your pulse if you did not have these moments or these days. And part of this is life. And part of this is the twilight zone that so many of us are forced into, where so much, that we're faced with just defies logic and is not child-centric. And I think the mistake we make as parents are incredible opportunities for us to open up conversations with our kids to allow them to see us as human, and that when we are modeling healthy behavior, owning our mistakes, talking about them, talking about what we want to do better in the future, and then following through with that, we're leading by example and modeling what healthy looks like. It is so easy for us to be consumed by what's happening on the narcissist parenting time, but the reality is we don't have control over that. And so much of it feels frustrating because it's going to be chalked up to hearsay if it's coming from your kids, or when we're in the court, so much of it is going to be he said, she said, or she said, she said, or he said, he said, and the majority of it will not meet the threshold of what the court cares about or gives any weight to, because they see such extremes. The scale that they put things on is so skewed that very little of what we are experiencing even registers on their scale. So, I challenge you to bring it back to center and put all of your energy and efforts into the things that you do have control over during your parenting time. We don't want to continue giving the narcissist any space in our head when we don't have to. And we always come back to radical acceptance. It's not fair that we should have to co-parent with this type of person. It's not fair that our children have to spend time with an unhealthy, neglectful, abusive person. We can go on a loop of that all day long. It would make for a really boring YouTube video, I promise you. But I would rather bring it back to center and determine what is in our control, because that is where our power is. And our children are dependent on us to be their rocks. So maybe it's doing an inventory and figuring out what areas in your world as a parent need to be fine-tuned. So many of you are going through this, and this topic hits home, and it's incredibly painful because I see your messages that come through, even if I'm unable to respond to them, and I apologize for that. I'm showing myself grace because I am just one person, and as much as I would love to comment and respond to everything that comes through, it's humanly impossible at this point. But I feel your pain weaved into all of those messages that I receive. And I encourage you to reach out to others who are also experiencing these same difficult paths. Connect with people in the OMB chapters. You can connect with them at ombchapters.com, in the Lemonade Club, which is thelemonadeclub.com, single parent groups in your community, through your church, lean on your family members, whatever it is for you. But no one should be doing this alone. You know, there are so many of us. We have to come together and create that support network and this village. There are 2 coach graduates from my high conflict divorce coach training program who really stand out to me on this topic. And I'm sure I'm missing others, so my apologies in advance to anyone else. But if you go to HC for high conflict, hcdivorcecoach.com, and then select find a divorce coach, Jen of Rooted Elm Coaching, she's located in Pennsylvania. So you just find Pennsylvania on the drop-down menu. And also Jenny Ward is in California. And you can find her under the California search feature. She has over 30 years in child education, specializing in trauma, social, emotional development with children. Jen is just a wealth of information. She's also a parenting coach. Regardless of where you live in the entire world, both of these women are absolutely amazing and a wealth of information on this topic. So I highly encourage you to reach out and connect with them. And I'm grateful for all of our collective wisdom, for all of you coming together to join me this morning. I know Instagram is not ideal for everyone, so I try to film this for YouTube as well, so you can watch it at your convenience. Take care, everyone, and happy September, happy full moon.